attempts to remind us of that, I think that there's a subtle also reminder of powerlessness that was never true for African people, right? I think that what we need to do in terms of our frame, if we're going to do white power against black power, is show black power, right? I think that we got examples of what that looks like in our history, and our young people are like, I don't know, they're tired of slave movies, because we tell the slave movies wrong, right?
That's right.
We tell the slave movies from the position of a victim,
That's right.
of being defeated. Nobody wants to see that story. Nobody wants to see no. I don't want to take my kids to the lynching museum. They don't need to see that. We know we lost and we losing. We also know that we fought and are still fighting. And that has to be the frame. The frame has to be, how do you tell our story from a position of power? How do we tell our story from a position of victory? How do we say that this right here is evidence that we immortal people, that in the attempts of the most vicious attack against the people in human history, we still here loving each other, sharing culture, passing down traditions, still doing our best to revive and to revitalize what it means to be African and black in this world. I went to a powwow yesterday. I told my boy we moved out Beta Shabazz, which is hard for me. And so he's in a Disney magnet school up north. And so there's a lot of challenges for that. But they told him that he had the day off today. And they said it's a holiday. And I think they probably used the word Columbus Day. And he actually, so, he just had to get the day off. He wanted to eat cookies and like watch TV. But he wanted to know why he had the day off, which is a fair question. Why we got the day off? What is the holiday? And I told him it's Indigenous Peoples Day. And he was like, what's that? Right? And instead of taking him to a museum to show him about the Native American history, I found a powwow yesterday up north off of California, and they still doing their stuff. Right? That was the first time I've ever been in a room with so many Native Americans. It was like, I was emotional in there just thinking about what culture does to survive with people, right? When you think that they wiped out, when you think they just caricatures on a sports team, when we think that we just, victims of somebody else's trauma, culture is the thing that reminds us of our immortality, of our ability to resist, to shape, to adapt, to continue to use our ancestral traditions, our art, our music, our dance, our spiritual systems, to use that as a force of resistance has been my life's work. And so the only reason I'm able to have that is because of my elders. The only reason I'm able to have that is because there are institutions that are built. And we in a moment now where we're not doing none of that. We're talking a lot of stuff, we got a lot of hashtags, we got a lot of anger, a lot of awareness, but we don't have the kind of willpower that our ancestors and our elders had to build the kind of the institutions that made me. And so there's some sadness around that. Like I appreciate, there's a resurgence of the style of Africa. The dashiki print is popular. But the willpower and the discipline and the culture and the traditions are being eroding, even in the midst of what looks like victory. There's a part of me that wanted to see, there's a part of me, this is unpopular, there's a part of me that wanted to see the city burn last night. There's a part of me that regrets taking the people's opportunity away to demonstrate their power in a rageful way. Right? We know, right, we're going to tear down our own neighborhoods, right? And there was a moment that we would have some disruption, but I think there's some chaos that's necessary in these moments. I think that what happens now is the same thing that would happen if Hillary won the presidency. The people would be like, okay, everything's cool, right? I think the secondary degree verdict made people feel like, okay, fine, I can just go back to work. I can just go back to Netflix. I can just keep going. Everything's cool right now. I think we need a little bit of chaos. Right? I think we needed to not rely on the system in the same way that we do for justice. And I think that the reason that these stories, our ancestors, our traditions are important is because there's so much power and so much truth in their version of what justice meant that's much more uncomfortable than I think that I see in our generation. So I continue to be fed by our traditions, by our culture, by my elders, by our ancestors, and I will continue to do my work to try to inspire all of us to give young people the proper frame to think about this moment that we're in. We ain't lost yet. That we still here, we still fighting, that we will prevail, and that the evidence of that is embedded in the history that we must point to and focus on more so than I think that we do the ma'afa and the trauma and the trial and tribulation. I think our people need that. We take and see the movies like the 12 Years a Slave, and I work with young people like the question I always ask them is, you know, you mad now, what would you have done if you were there? They always would have been fighters. Yeah. Where nobody have been no quote unquote house slave. You know, he was in a house poisoning too, but like just for argument's sake, nobody would have been no shucking and jiving. Everybody would have been out Martin Luther King. Everybody would have been the Black Panthers. And every young person I ever talked to that watches those history moments would have been right there in the middle of that fight because they're inspired by the fight. But then we say, like, what's happening right now? Where you at? We still in it. Like we still under attack. And that disconnect between using the inspiration of the history to move towards action is a disconnect that I think that we particularly are responsible for. So I think all of that has to do with the frame, with the intention, and I think that we got a lot of opportunity right now to move our people in the right direction. We just got to be intentional and deliberate and unified about that. So those are just my thoughts. Just off the top of my head, I didn't know it was a presentation, but like, I just again appreciate the time and the space to connect to my elders and my ancestors. And I always am eternally grateful for what y'all have done to me to give me the kind of fortitude to be able to withstand and to resist. So I share that. Okay, next we'd like to ask our sister to come up.
Start by saying that I'm very, very grateful to my elders who are in the room. Surely I spent several years in the audience just listening to them, many of them, and some of whom are sitting here today. And so I just want to show my gratitude for that and show that, I'm a student of that and hopefully a faithful custodian of that tradition. And so when I was asked to speak today, I looked carefully at the flyer, what it said, and one of the things that was captioned in what was sent to me was this idea of mental incarceration, of how education that we are getting serves to keep us locked into the systems that we are in, repeating and maintaining the status quo and not breaking through in ways that are liberating for us. And many thoughts went through my mind with that, but the foremost thing that I thought about is that I came up in the nationalist circle when I was in college. I was sure by the time I left college and I traveled to Africa the first time that my children were not going to go to school. Like school wasn't the thing. And many of you know that myself and Sister Africa Porter founded Indigo Nation Homeschool Association, which is supporting African American parents on the homeschool journey. And we continue it till today. And we started from birth. Just deciding that we're going to homeschool our children. And thus far, our family has successfully homeschooled 2 children to college, from birth to college. That journey's not easy. But while we can celebrate that, the thing that struck me about this mental incarceration in our process of trying to redeem ourselves is that in every state there are different laws about how you can homeschool your children. So even if you thwart the system and you have nothing to do with public school, you still have to abide by the laws of your state. In the state of Illinois, it's really unique, and everyone's saying that if you want to homeschool, live in Illinois, because it's so liberal. Illinois has no rules, only 2 rules. The 2 rules are you must keep your child on grade level, and most parents are going to do that. And also you must teach them in English. You must teach them in English. Why English?
Well, they want to know what you know.
And not only that, when I teach my child in English, I give them the English culture as their point of reference. That is where they will feel most familiar. That is what they will gravitate to. That thank you, and then decide that this is what I understand best. And so even when we feel that we're doing something hyper-revolutionary by withdrawing our students from the system, we are still locked into a box that makes an adult child say, well, I know the songs on the radio, I know and Jay-Z is this and that. And I have to correct my children, like, what? No. Just because he speaks the same language that you do, and he dresses in a way that you're familiar with, does not mean that you all are the same, right? So we're fighting a battle that we have not yet won. In other words, we're still locked in the box, right? And I teach history at DePaul. And one of the things I ask my students to look at and to think about is the lofty words that were enshrined in the Declaration of Independence, right? Where they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And amongst these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, etc., etc. And that if any government is abusive of that, it is your right to rise up and alter and abolish it.
That's right.
Of course, they were talking about the ability to protest, like what should have happened with the right, I think, framing of Laquan McDonald. But here we ask, are we part of that? Right? And I asked them to think about the Dred Scott decision, that when Dred Scott came up in 1857 saying that, oh, I'm here to redeem that right, right? That the Supreme Court, not the lower court, told him, said, neither you nor your descendants, whether they be free or not, were ever intended to be a part of that understanding of life, liberty, pursuit. That you weren't intended.
That's right.
So I'm saying that people have laws on there, but forget about what they mouth saying. We changed that in 1960. No, you didn't. Right? Hear what they said. You're not intended by laws to ever be a part of that.
That's right.
You were always going to be locked in. He said, whether you're free or not, you have for so long been a part of a class that we call an inferior being. That you're not a part of it. Don't come up in here trying to redeem nothing. Right? And I'm saying if a nation has in their laws restricted you, and in their schooling system restricted you, ask yourself, is this your home? Is this where you belong? When they, not people, I'm not saying individual or de jure, if individuals don't like you. I'm saying if they have it in their laws, they don't like it. And they trap you no matter how you try to get away, there's another trap, even more refined, right? And this summer I was in Ethiopia. And you know, you're rank and file people, you know, they look at you like, Africa, right? They're like, you're from Kenya, you're from Senegal. And I'm like, Chicago, you know. And the thing that struck me though is that when you speak to people who really know Ethiopian history, they say, you know what? Ethiopia wouldn't exist without the people in the diaspora. You are one with us. You know what I'm saying? That when Ethiopia was falling, the last free African space, it was people in the diaspora who rose up and put up protests, just like we see protests happening in the major cities, and made sure that Ethiopia did not go down. People from Chicago, including John Jackson, went to fly planes and to, in other ways, give help to that nation. And I'm saying, if America is saying, I'm not part of you, and all they have is capture you, where do you belong? And where do you go? And what options do you have? Must you always kick against a wall that is not coming down? Right? And for how long will you do that? And are there people who recognize you as part of them? Not individually. I mean, individuals have problems. I don't know. But I'm saying, are there laws against you there? Right? And have they made Supreme Court decisions against you? What other options are you willing to consider? And that's what I would just like to leave and put on the table in terms of transcending our mental incarceration. What are our options? Thinking in terms of solutions. What can we do for ourselves that does not put us in a further and another trap? So thank you so very much.
Greetings. Like my brother before me, I'm going to ask Commissioner Douglas to continue. And I feel always excited to be here at this, any celebration of African life and African people. This is how I get energized and recharged for the battle that I'm part of the struggle, this historical struggle that I'm in. I look forward to Kwanzaa, I look forward to Juneteenth, and I look forward to this special presentation because, again, it invigorates me and lets me know that I'm doing the right thing, that I devoted my life to the right cause. I want to talk about this African mindset in the context of reparations. I wrote a piece, and that's a few years ago, about 5, 6 years ago, about 4 years ago, called Getting to Reparations, the 21st Century Reparations Manifesto, People of African Descent. A full and comprehensive reparations approach is determined by International Court of Justice, the International Law Commission, and other international law guidelines. America fulfilling its obligation to make full reparations. And in this piece, I looked at the 5 components of reparations under international norms. One of the things that we are unaware of is that there's a tremendous amount of law around reparations internationally, maybe not none that exists in this country. There's a tremendous body of law around reparations in the international community. Yesterday I drove back from Detroit at the National Conference of Black Lawyers' 50th anniversary. I was speaking on the counter reparations. And it was surprising that the lawyers who have dedicated themselves to the movement, to the struggle, are unaware of this body of law that exists around reparations in an international forum. And so I found myself introducing to elders in the legal field, in the revolutionary radical legal field, some new information. But under international law, there's 5 components of reparations. And I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm going to focus on the last one, which is germane to this particular topic. But the first one is cessation and guarantees of non-repetition. So you must cease the bad acts. That's the first aspect of reparations. You must cease the bad acts, and you must put in place mechanisms that ensure that these bad acts cease. So Dr. Wilson tells us that this European global order is a machine that falsifies African consciousness, that creates an anti-African consciousness right now, today, historically as well as today. We see it in every aspect of this culture. It is designed to produce this anti-African consciousness. So the first thing that in a reparative program must be cessation and guarantees of non-repetition. The second is restitution. How you turn people back to the way they would have been had they not been injured in the first place. How do we recapture African mind? It's part of the history that our sister is dedicated to do. It's part of the psychological work that my brother Obari has dedicated his life to do. But how do we get back to where we would have been had we not been injured in the first place? The third component is compensation. Many people want to start reparations off with compensation, but that's not the real thrust of reparations. The thrust of reparations is full repair of the people. The fourth component is satisfaction. How do you return the dignity back to African people? You talked about, how we exist in a country where when we're telling the story of our history, we tell it in a way that further traumatizes us.
Yes, right.
When I was coming into consciousness, I was reading everything about Africa, everything about Kemet, everything about West Africa, East Africa, everything about South Africa that I could put my hands on. And I didn't want to read anything about early American history, about the slave period, about the enslavement period. I didn't want to read nothing of it because I was ashamed of that history. Even as someone who was endeavoring to become conscious. But I was reading everything about Africa. Then I came across this book called There's a River by Vincent Harding. And he looked at the river of struggle, the river of resistance from when we were first brought to this country up until 1865. And it was a truly eye-opening expose of what we did to fight. The victories and the spirit, most of the spirit that we possess, that our ancestors possessed. And I knew that was my spirit. And reading that, it opened my spirit even to a wider form of activism, a wider form of jumping into this struggle. And so as we talk about this anti-African mindset, we have to be cognizant of that there is a way out, and that we have to be institutionalized in our